This is how you cut and lay out your pattern. Now you've got your instruction sheet right here, and this will actually map for you and show you exactly where to lay your pieces, if you should lay your pieces upside down or lay them on the right side up. And you can also be creative. For me, with this dress that I'm going to be sewing, I'm actually going to be using two separate kinds of fabric for this dress. So I'm using part of this pattern on one piece of material and part on another. It's really simple to mix and match. You just have to make sure that you have enough fabric. So once you get your pattern pieces all cut out, I've got mine all right here, and I've cut around the edges, and I've already done it once right here because this is going to be my lining. And what you do is when you look at your pattern, it will say, like right here, it says center back. And this line means that you can cut on the line because that's not a fold. Right here on this piece, it says center fold, place on the center line. If it's on a fold, you need to make sure that there's a fold in your fabric. So you get your fabric and lay it all out nice and flat. You can wash your fabric before you start. A lot of times that's recommended with the sewing and the care of the garment. Sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. It just depends on if I want to waste the time doing that. But you want to make sure that your pattern and your fabric is flat and really nice and down even. Then you just get your pattern and you place it right there on the fold. And all I'm going to do is pin it in a couple different spots. And I like to do some good pinning so that it doesn't move around. And there will also, if you have a direction on your fabric, if you've got all flowers here and the stems are down here, make sure that you put all your pattern pieces facing the same direction so you don't have anything ski-wampus on the bottom of the fabric. You don't want to have half the dress with the flowers right side up and the other half of them upside down. So make sure you do that. Now, since this doesn't have to be placed on the fold, but I need to cut two, when it says cut two, that just means you cut with using this side of the fabric and also this. So no matter what you cut, you'll already have two pieces out there. So since this is the back, it's going to match perfectly because I've already got the two pieces of fabric I'm cutting out at once. This line right here on the fabric will show you the direction so that you don't want it to go like this or your pattern will be off. You follow this and you can measure from here to here and here to here to make sure it's exactly perfect. Or since this is all polka dots and they're lined up perfect, I can just eyeball that with the measure of the polka dots, which is what I'm going to do. And I've cut out my fabric, so I'm right about on the size that I'm going to make, which is size 8. And you just go ahead and you pin these on. That way I'm just going to use the top half of this fabric, and I'll use some extra things maybe to make a bow or something like that. Now that you've got the pattern pin nice on here, I'm just going to start cutting out the fabric. You got to make sure that nothing's underneath it. Got your sewing scissors, and you're just going to follow the line just like this. When you get to these little marks right here, it's a little triangle. That means you're supposed to make a little triangle just like this on the outside of the fabric, so it looks like this. I hope you can see that right there. And you can cut that little triangle out. That's used for matching. And that triangle is important when you're going to match up the side seams together, or if you're going to match up the sleeves. What I like to do instead of cutting out that little triangle is I just take my scissors and do a little tiny clip right there. And so I just match up that little notch instead of cutting out. That's a little time-saving tip. I like to cut it out that way so I don't waste my time making all those little triangles. But that's the way your sewing teacher would probably teach you how to cut it out. So don't blame me if you get in trouble. And I'm just going to follow right here along the next edge. And you know, sewing is really fun to do for little kids, but cutting is so important in the sewing that when you're sewing with little kids, especially like maybe 7 or 6 years old, you want to kind of watch and help with the cutting, because if they cut it out and it's not perfect, it doesn't have to be perfect, but if they cut it out and it's not even, it's really hard for the finished product to match up. So as a parent, you don't want them to get too frustrated, so kind of watch them as they're cutting it out. I mean, it's hard to keep your hand steady even when you're a mom, let alone as a little kid. So there you have it. I've got that pattern piece cut out. Next, you want to just finish cutting out whatever pattern pieces that you're making, but always remember, measure twice and cut once.